So today we're going to speak about pulse pressure variation and its significance in predicting fluid responsiveness in critically ill patients who are mechanically ventilated. In critically ill patients, it has been noticed that in the event of hypotension, roughly 50% of the patients respond to a fluid load, whereas the rest do not. Therefore, the first category is called preload dependent and the second category is called preload independent. In the preload independent patients, giving more fluid can be detrimental. Therefore, it is important to predict in whom the fluid bolus will be effective. To begin with, what is pulse pressure variation? To know that, we have to first know what is Frank Starling's law. Frank Starling's law of the heart states that the stroke volume increases when the end diastolic volume increases, when all other things remain constant. So here the stroke volume is indicative of the force of contraction and the end diastolic volume is indicative of the initial length of the muscle. This relationship between stroke volume and ventricular preload, which is the end diastolic volume, is not a linear one but is a curvilinear one, as we can see here. So if the ventricles lie in that part of the curve which is more vertical, then a particular increase in the fluid volume, that is end diastolic volume or the preload, will increase in a significant increase in the stroke volume, as you can see here. Whereas if the ventricles fall in that portion of the curve which is flatter, so the same increase in the ventricular preload will lead to a much less significant increase in stroke volume. So these persons that lie in the more vertical portion are said to be responders, whereas these persons who lie in the flatter part of the curve, they are said to be non-responders. Also important to note how the curves are different in a normal heart where it is more vertical versus an abnormal heart or a failing heart where it is flatter very early on. So in a normal heart, it is much more likely to lie in that portion where it might respond to a fluid bolus, that is an increase in the preload. And a failing heart is more likely to lie in that portion where it does not lead to much increase in the stroke volume with fluid boluses. We also need to know what are the respiratory changes in left ventricular stroke volume that occurs in a mechanically ventilated patient. Let us first familiarize ourselves with this diagram that I have drawn. This is the right heart, which is written as RH. This is the left heart. As you can see here, the venous return is through here. So the blood flows through from the peripheries and reaches the right heart. Then through the pulmonary vessels, which is indicated here, it exchanges gases with the alveoli and then it goes to the left heart. And from the left heart, it flows out through the aorta, which is mentioned here, through the aorta into the systemic circulation. As you can see here, this is the pleura in green, and this can be considered as the pleural cavity. this as well. First, let's consider what happens during inspiration, that is, when the ventilator gives a positive breath, positive pressure breath, right? So, this is air coming in as indicated by the black arrow with positive pressure. So, this positive pressure is transmitted into the pleura as well. So, the pleural pressure becomes more positive. As the pleural pressure becomes more positive, it exerts an effect on the venous return because of increasing pleural pressure. Therefore, the venous return decreases. When the venous return decreases, if you remember the Frank-Starling law, the preload decreases and therefore the stroke volume too should decrease. Therefore, the amount of blood that is pumped out of the right heart into the pulmonary vessels also decreases. Simultaneously, because of this positive pressure, there is increased pressure on the pulmonary vessels as well, that is the pulmonary artery. Therefore, the afterload of the right heart decreases as well. This also contributes to decreasing stroke volume. Now let's consider during the expiratory phase. So this inspiratory phase lasts for about 2 to 3 beats, during which time there will be lesser amount of blood collected in the pulmonary vessels. So when it comes time for the expiratory phase, although the pressure is released, the amount of blood that goes into the left heart is reduced because of the previous inspiratory phase. So for the left heart, it is during the expiratory phase that the preload decreases. So again, using the Frank-Starling law, when the preload decreases, the stroke volume decreases. We saw now how during inspiration, the positive pressure delivered by the ventilator decreases the right ventricular preload and thus decreases the right ventricular stroke volume. And therefore, during the expiratory phase, the left ventricular preload decreases and the left ventricular stroke volume decreases. So it is fair to say that intermittent positive pressure ventilation causes cyclical change in stroke volume in the left ventricle. Likewise, you must also keep in mind that the cyclical changes in the right ventricular stroke volume is more likely to occur if the right ventricle lies in the steeper part of the Frank-Starling curve, whereas if it was to lie on the flatter part of the curve, the changes would not be that prominent. And therefore, the cyclical changes of preload that would occur onto the left ventricle would also depend on the right ventricle being on the steeper part of the curve. Then, coming to the left ventricle in itself, the cyclical changes in the preload during inspiration versus expiration would have a significant effect if the left ventricle too was on the steep part of the Frank-Starling curve. Just like the right ventricle, if this too was on the flatter part of the curve, then you would see lesser changes in stroke volume. Therefore, I think it would be fair to say that the cyclical changes in stroke volume depends on biventricular preload dependence. Okay, with this, let us come to systolic pressure variation. Because the stroke volume is a major determinant of systolic pressure, it was thought that cyclical changes in the stroke volume could be determined by measuring the cyclical changes in the systolic pressure, and this change was called systolic pressure variation. Let's have a look at this graph representing how the pressures vary with respiration, that is the cyclical respiratory change. This here is the maximal systolic pressure, and this here is the minimal systolic pressure. Therefore, the difference between the maximal and the minimal systolic pressure is the systolic pressure variation. There are certain other terms as well to be remembered. Now, this term here called the line of reference. Now, how do you obtain it? At the end of expiration in a mechanically ventilated patient, you give a pause. So, in the end expiratory pause, during this time when you measure the pressure, whatever pressure you get, that is the pressure of line of reference. So, this is how you define the line of reference. If you take the maximal recorded pressure and subtract it from the line of reference, you get this delta up. Similarly, if you take the minimal recorded systolic pressure and see the difference, you get the delta down. This delta down is a very important parameter because it represents an expiratory decrease in the left ventricular preload and stroke volume due to an inspiratory decrease in the right ventricular preload and stroke volume. In mechanically ventilated patients, hemorrhage has been shown to increase the systolic pressure variation as well as the delta down, whereas volume expansion has been shown to decrease the systolic pressure variation and the delta down. Delta down can be considered as an indicator of fluid responsiveness because the larger is the delta down, more is the increase in the cardiac index once fluid resuscitation has been done. But there's a problem with systolic pressure variation. These changes in the systolic pressure in a respiratory cycle result from changes in the transmural pressure, which is mainly related to changes in the left ventricular stroke volume, as well as changes in the pleural pressure, that is the extramural pressure. Therefore, changes in the systolic pressure during respiration can be seen despite no change in the stroke volume itself. So this brings us to the concept of pulse pressure variation. So we know that pulse pressure is the difference between systolic pressure and diastolic pressure. So this is directly proportional to the stroke volume and inversely proportional to the arterial compliance. Now, how is pulse pressure not influenced by changes in the pleural pressure? Because cyclical changes in the pleural pressure induced by insufflation of the lungs affects both the systolic as well as the diastolic pressure. Therefore, pulse pressure variation is said to reflect the respiratory changes in the left ventricular stroke volume better. Okay, now coming to the formula of pulse pressure variation. Pulse pressure variation, or delta PP, given in percentage, is equal to 100 into difference in the maximum minus the minimum pulse pressure divided by the average of the two pulse pressures, wherein the P maximum and P minimum are the maximum and minimum pulse pressure during one respiratory. It was seen that a delta PP value, that is pulse pressure variation of 13% or more, would be the differentiator between a responder and a non-responder. A responder would be someone whose cardiac index increased by 15% with a fluid bolus. And it was also seen that once the patient was fluid resuscitated and the cardiac index came up, the pulse pressure variation came down. So this is a good indicator that pulse pressure variation can be used as a differentiator between a responder and a non-responder. But there are certain limitations. This cannot be used in everybody, okay, like the patients who have arrhythmias. Plus, This has not been validated in a non-sedated, spontaneously breathing patient. The other drawback is that they say the respiratory changes in the left ventricular stroke volume might be an indication of afterload dependence rather than preload dependence. For example, in patients with congestive cardiac failure. The other drawback is in patients who have less compliant arteries. In them, slight changes in the stroke volume could still result in changes in the pulse pressure. Thus, in conclusion, respiratory changes in the left ventricular stroke volume through means like pulse pressure variation and systolic pressure variation are very good methods to determine fluid responsiveness. That's it for today, guys. Have a nice day.